A millionaire leaves his wife for his lover, and he sees her and her twins on a fancy cruise years later. Sophia City is where Diana Al-Sharif is going. A deep, smooth voice seemed to wake her up from the dream she was in and pick her up from her thoughts. "I think this is yours," the voice said, and Diana turned around to look at a guy who looked too good to be true. He was tall, with broad shoulders and eyes the color of the Mediterranean Sea. They were the kind of blue that made you feel like the whole world was on your shoulders. His smile was so good that it could melt the ice in the Arctic in an instant. When he held out a thin lace handkerchief, Diana felt a rush of air leave her lungs. It wasn't her handkerchief, but somehow she would have sworn it was. "If only to prolong this meeting, thank you," she managed to say, her fingers trembling as they took the handkerchief from him. Their eyes locked and the world around them seemed to fade away. He said, "My name is Karim Aled," and the sound of his voice sent chills down her spine. "Diana Al-Sharif," she answered, surprised at how easily her name slipped from her lips, as though the encounter was meant to be. Karim's smile deepened and Diana's heart skipped a beat. "Diana," he repeated, enjoying her name, "would you care to dance?" Without waiting for her answer, Karim gently took her hand and led her to the dance floor. The orchestra struck up a soft melody and Diana found herself swept into his embrace, moving easily with him, as though their steps had been rehearsed in some distant, forgotten dream. "I never believed in love." At first sight, Karim whispered, his lips brushing her ear as they danced. Diana closed her eyes, allowing herself to be carried away by the rhythm of the music, the smell of sandalwood and leather that clung to his skin and the warmth of his embrace. At that moment, she knew her life would never be the same again. Fate had spun its threads, bringing them together in a dance that promised passion, love and, though she didn't yet know it, a pain that would test the limits of her heart. The night passed, but for Diana and Karim, time seemed to stand still. Beneath the dimmed lights and the soft strains of a romantic tune, a new story was starting, one that would shake the foundation of their life. Months later, Diana stood before the mirror in a lavish wedding suite, fixing the veil over her dark hair. Her image showed a woman transformed by love, her eyes sparkling with excitement and anticipation. "Are you ready, my dear?" her mother, Miriam, asked, her voice shaking with emotion. Diana nodded, unable to speak. Her heart beat so loudly she feared it might be heard through the bodice of her wedding gown. The aisle before her seemed endless. Every step echoed in her ears as she walked down the road toward the grand cathedral. The guests stood as she passed, their whispers of praise blending into a soft chorus. And there, at the end of the path, stood Karim. His adoring look made her knees tremble. When she finally reached him, he took her hands in his. "You are more beautiful than I ever thought," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The ceremony felt like a dream. Diana barely heard the words spoken by the priest, so lost was she in Karim's eyes, in the promises of a future together. "I, Karim, take you, Diana, as my legal wife to love and cherish you all the days of my life," he announced, his voice steady and resolute. When it was heard, Diana felt the words rise from the very core of her being. "I, Diana, take you, Karim, as my lawful husband to love and respect you all the days of my life," she said, her voice trembling with emotion and devotion. The kiss that sealed their union was electric, passionate, full of silent vows. The applause of the guests seemed far away, as if Diana and Karim were wrapped in their own bubble of happiness. The gathering was a spectacle of opulence and grace. Champagne flowed like rivers of gold, music beckoned them to dance, and, at the center of it all, Diana and Karim stood radiant with joy as they glided across the dance floor. Diana Al-Sharif gazed into Karim Alad's eyes, her heart swelling with a joy so overwhelming it felt as though it might burst. "Are you happy, my love?" he asked, his voice a soft whisper. As their first waltz as husband and wife continued, Diana rested her head on his shoulder, her heart racing with the warmth of a love that seemed endless. "More than I ever thought possible," she answered, her voice thick with emotion. As they spun around the elegant ballroom, the glow of the chandeliers shining in her eyes, she couldn't help but feel that she had reached the pinnacle of happiness. Happiness, this was the life she had always dreamed of, a fairy tale that had come true, a future filled with endless possibilities. But deep within her, a small, quiet voice stirred, whispering a warning. Could something this perfect really last forever? She quickly pushed the thought aside, unwilling to let any hint of doubt spoil what was supposed to be the best day of her life. As the evening wore on and the guests reveled in their joy, Diana and Karim shared knowing glances, eager to begin their new life together. Little did they know fate had a very different plan for them. This dreamlike night would soon turn out to be only the calm before the storm threatening to unravel everything they had made. The honeymoon days passed quickly, like the passing foam of the sea, and life returned to its normal rhythm. Diana, now Mrs. Alsed, threw herself into her legal career with renewed passion, while Karim focused on growing his business empire. At first everything seemed perfect, but gradually, almost imperceptibly, things started to shift. One evening, Diana made a special dinner, eagerly waiting for Karim to come home. It was already 9:30 p.m., and the meal she had carefully planned was getting cold on the table. Her phone buzzed with a text message, "I'll be late, don't wait up." A knot tightened in Diana's stomach. This was the third time this week. She let out a heavy sigh, trying to calm the rising anxiety in her chest. When Karim finally came home, it was past midnight. Diana faked sleep, but she could hear him moving around the room, the soft rustling of his clothes as he changed, the unfamiliar scent of a perfume lingering in the air. The next morning, Diana mustered the courage to approach him. "Karim, can we talk?" she asked, her voice quivering just slightly. He looked up from his phone, frustration flashing across his face. "Does it have to be now? I have an important meeting in half an hour," he answered dismissively. Diana felt as though she had been hit. "You always have an important meeting," she whispered. "What's happening to us, Karim? I barely see you, and when you're home it feels like you're 1,000 miles away." Karim ran a hand through his hair, a sigh leaving his lips. "Diana, please, I'm under a lot of pressure at work. This new combination is taking up all my time." "And what about us?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Our marriage," she pushed, tears threatening to spill. "Don't start with the drama, Diana." Karim snapped, his tone harsh. "You know how important this business is to me, to our future." Diana recoiled, the words hitting her like a physical blow. "Drama? Is that what you think of my care for our marriage?" Karim looked at his watch and groaned. "I don't have time for this now. We'll talk when I get back." Without another word, he grabbed his briefcase and left, leaving Diana alone with her swirling thoughts and growing fears. That night, lying in their empty bed, Diana couldn't hold back the tears. Where was the man she had fallen in love with, the one who used to look at her like she was the only woman in the world? Doubt crept into her mind like a toxic shadow. Her phone buzzed again. It was from Karim. "Don't wait up, I need to stay at the office all night." Diana clutched the phone to her chest, a sob leaving her lips. The gap between them seemed to grow with each passing day, and she had no idea how to stop it. As she stared out the window at the lights of the city, which once had seemed full of promise, Diana couldn't help but wonder, what secret was Karim hiding? Would she have the guts to face the truth when it was finally exposed? The night stretched before Diana, long and solitary, filled with unspoken questions and fears she refused to face. Little did she know this was just the beginning of a storm that promised to shatter everything she thought she knew about her life and her love. Days turned into weeks, and Diana's suspicions grew like a looming shadow, darker and more dangerous with each passing moment. One afternoon, as she was preparing Karim's suit for the dry cleaner, her fingers brushed against something in the inner pocket. Her heart raced rapidly as she pulled out a small folded piece of paper. She opened it, and in that instant the world she knew crumbled to pieces. It was a note written in fine, flowing handwriting. "Last night was amazing. I can't wait to see you again. With love, Jay." Diana's hands trembled violently. Her mind refused to understand the words her eyes had seen. But there it was, an undeniable proof of Karim's treason. As if fate itself were mocking her, the door creaked open at that very moment. Karim entered, loosening his tie. "Diana, I'm—" He stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes landing on his wife standing in the middle of the room, the note clutched in her hand, tears streaming down her face. "What is this, Karim?" Diana's voice was barely a whisper, trembling with pain and amazement. Karim's face drained of color as he stared at the paper in her hand. "Diana, I can explain." "Explain what?" Diana's voice cracked, her initial shock quickly turning to anger. "Explain how you've been lying to me. How have you violated our marriage?" Karim took a step toward her, but Diana recoiled as if his presence burned her. "Please, Diana, listen to me. Things aren't what they seem." "Oh, they're not, Diana. let out a bitter laugh then. You haven't been sleeping with another woman. You haven't been breaking every promise you made to me. Karim fell silent, his failure to react speaking louder than any words. The ground beneath Diana felt like it was breaking open. Who is she? Diana asked, her voice shaking, though part of her already knew the answer. Karim closed his eyes, defeated. Jasmine, my helper. The name hit Diana like a heavy blow. Jasmine, the young, beautiful helper that Karim had hired just a few months ago. The same one who always smiled too brightly whenever Diana visited the office. Please, Diana, Karim began, but she cut him off. How long, Karim? She shouted, throwing the crushed note at him. 3 months, he admitted, his voice, barely a whisper. Diana felt the air leave her lungs. 3 months, while I was fighting for our marriage, trying to reunite with you, you were in another woman's arms. I want you to leave. Diana said, her voice icy and detached. Right now, I don't want to see you, Diana. Please, we can fix this. I love you. It was a mistake out. Diana screamed, the tears blurring her vision. If you ever loved me, if there's any respect left in you, you'll leave now. Karim looked at her, a mix of sorrow and resignation in his eyes. He picked up his bag and, without saying another word, walked out the door. The deafening quiet that followed felt suffocating. Diana fell to the floor, sobbing, racking her body. Her perfect world, her fairy tale, love, had shattered in a matter of minutes. As the night settled over Sakaka, Diana sat there on the floor of their apartment, wondering how she would survive this betrayal, how she would rebuild her life from the ashes of her marriage. What she didn't know was that this painful revelation was only the beginning of a trip that would lead her to the deepest depths of sorrow, but also to heights of strength she never thought she could possess. The days that followed passed in a haze of sadness and confusion. For Diana, the flat once filled with laughter and love now felt like a melon of broken memories. Every corner reminded her of Karim, of the life they had shared and the vows that had now turned to dust. The doorbell rang, snapping Diana al-Sharif out of her numb state. As she opened the door, she came face to face with Karim Aled. His disheveled look and bloodshot eyes made it clear that he too was suffering. Diana. His voice was hoarse, heavy with emotion. We need to talk. She stepped aside, allowing him to enter the silence between them, thick and stifling. It was a silence laden with unsaid words, with feelings barely contained. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Karim began, settling onto the couch where they'd once shared so many peaceful moments about us, about everything. Diana stood across from him, arms crossed, protected, ly over her chest, and her voice was barely above a whisper, strained with the weight of everything unsaid. Karim met her look, his eyes swimming with guilt and something darker. I love you, Diana, I always have, but you love Jasmine more. Diana finished for him, each word a sharp knife to her heart. Karim lowered his eyes, unable to hold her stare. It's not that easy with Jasmine. With her, I feel like I can be myself. No demands, no pressures. Diana let out a bitter laugh, and you couldn't be yourself with me. The hurt laced her words, her voice shaking. After everything we've been through together. Karim's face eased, the weight of his own guilt heavy on his shoulders. I never wanted it to end like this, but I can't keep living a lie, Diana. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to me. Tears that Diana had been holding back finally spilt. And is this fair, leaving me for your assistant? Is this fair? Karim rose, moving toward, her sorrow etched in every step. I'm so sorry, Diana. I never meant for it to happen this way, but I can't deny how I feel. And what about what I feel? Diana's voice broke, the raw pain, obvious. What about our vows, our plans, our future? The future's changed. Karim replied softly, and I think it's better if we go our different ways. His words hit her like a blow. Diana felt as though the very ground beneath her was being ripped away. So that's it, she whispered, her voice barely audible, breaking with the weight of everything they had shared, years of marriage, of love, thrown away for a whim. Karim took a step toward her, like he might try to comfort her, but Diana recoiled, stepping back. Don't touch me, Karim, you lost that right. Please, Diana. He began, but she cut him off. Go to her. Diana snapped, her voice, a mix of fury and grief. Go and never come back. Kareem's eyes lingered on her, filled with a cocktail of sorrow and a strange sense of relief. Without another word, he grabbed the bag that Diana hadn't even noticed and walked out the door. The sound of the door closing echoed in the silence of the flat, marking the final end of their marriage. Diana fell to the floor, her sobs racking her fragile body. Everything she had believed in, everything she had loved, had shattered in an instant as the night settled over Sakaka. Diana stayed on the cold floor, broken and abandoned, grappling with the deep ache of betrayal, wondering how she would ever find the strength to rise again. What she didn't know was that this painful ending was only the beginning of a journey, one that would lead her to find a strength she never knew she had and a future she could never have imagined. The days bled into weeks and the weeks into months. Diana fell into a deep depression, a darkness so consuming that the world outside seemed like a faraway dream. The blinds were drawn, casting the apartment in perpetual shadow, mirroring the state of her mind. The phone rang constantly, but she ignored it. Messages from friends and family piled up unopened. Her job, once a source of energy, was forgotten. Office calls went unanswered. One afternoon the doorbell rang again, persistent. Diana, covered in a blanket on the couch, didn't even stir, but the person on the other side refused to give up. "Diana, I know you're in there. Open the door or I'll break it down." The voice was familiar with a sigh of despair. Diana dragged herself to the door and opened it. There stood Salma, her best friend since university, her face marked with shock as she took in the sight of Diana. "Oh my God, Diana, what have you done to yourself?" Salma whispered, running inside. Diana looked at herself as though seeing her image for the first time in weeks. Her hair was tangled, she wore the same clothes from Diego and her face was streaked with dried tears. "He left Salma." Diana's voice cracked rough from disuse. "He left me for her." Salma embraced her tightly and Diana fell into her arms, sobs racking her fragile body. "I know, darling, I know." Salma whispered gently, touching her hair. "But you can't keep living like this." Diana al-Sharif Wood was crumbling, her spirit clearly breaking as she pulled away from Salma. Her eyes were empty, hollow. "So what?" Diana's voice was barely a whisper tinged with dread. "I have nothing left. Karim was my life, my future enough." Salma's voice was firm but gentle as she put a hand on Diana's shoulder, trying to steady her. "Karim wasn't your life. You are your life." Diana's gaze fell to the ground, the weight of her grief making her words almost inaudible. "That bright lawyer, that strong, independent woman I used to be, she died the day he left." Salma stared at her, her eyes steady. "No, she didn't. She's still here, buried under all this pain. But she's still here and we're going to bring her back." With a calm but unflavoring grip, Salma led Diana toward the bathroom. "First a shower," she insisted. "Then we'll eat and after that we'll talk." Diana, too tired to fight, let herself be led. The warm water from the shower hit her skin like a rebirth. It washed away the grime, but, more importantly, it eased the ache inside her. By the time they sat down to eat the soup Salma had made, Diana felt the stirrings of something she thought was long gone, a flicker of life that she had thought had been extinguished forever. "I don't know how to go on, Salma," Diana confessed, her voice shaky. "Every part of this place, every moment of my day, everything reminds me of him." Salma reached out, taking her hand in hers. "Maybe it's time for a change." She suggested a new starting, a new starting. Diana repeated the words ringing in her mind. The idea felt both frightening and liberating at once. "Yes," Salma continued. "A new place, maybe a new job, something that's just yours, without the shadow of Karim hanging over you." Diana glanced around the room where the once happy memories now felt sour, tainted. For the first time in months, she felt a hint of hope stirring in her chest. Maybe you're right," she mumbled. Salma smiled, her face relaxing as she saw a glimmer of the old Diana returning. "Of course I am, and I'll be with you every step of the way." As the evening drew on and the city lights of Sakaka glittered outside, Diana felt a slight shift inside her. The pain was still there, raw and deep, but it didn't overwhelm her totally anymore. With Salma's help, maybe, just maybe, she could find the strength to rebuild her life. Little did Diana know fate had much larger plans in store for her, plans that would lead her on a path of self-discovery, strength and, eventually, a twist of destiny that would change everything. As the weeks passed, Diana slowly began to piece her life back together. With Salma's help, she found a new apartment and began entertaining offers from law companies. Though the pain remained, it no longer paralyzed her. One morning, as she was preparing for an interview, a sudden wave of nausea hit her, rushing her to the bathroom after rinsing her mouth. A terrifying thought crossed her mind. With trembling hands, she reached into the bathroom cabinet and pulled out a pregnancy test, one she had bought months earlier, when she still dreamed of having a family with Kareem. The wait for the result felt like an eternity. Diana paced back and forth in the small bathroom, her heart racing. When she finally looked at the result, time seemed to freeze. It was great. "No, this can't be," she whispered, dropping to the floor, still holding the test in her hands. Her hands shook as she dialed Salma's number. "Sarah, are you okay?" Salma's worried voice came through. "Salma, I'm pregnant," Diana managed to say, her voice cracking. "What are you sure?" Salma gasped. "I just took the test." "It's positive," Diana whispered. The first tears started to fall. "I'm coming over right now," Salma said quickly, hanging up the phone. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Before Salma finally arrived, Diana rushed to the door, falling into her arms. "Oh, Diana," Salma whispered, hugging her tightly. They sat on the couch, Diana, still shaking. "What am I going to do, Salma?" she asked, her voice barely heard. "I was starting to fix my life, and now this." Salma gently held her hands. "Diana, listen to me, this is not the end of the world. I know it's scary, but you're the best woman I know. You can do this." "But what about Kareem?" Diana asked the name of her ex-husband, leaving a bad taste in her mouth. "Should I tell him?" Salma frowned. "That's your choice, Diana, but think about you first. What do you want?" Diana put a hand over her mouth, feeling a mix of fear and something else, hope perhaps, stirring within her. I don't know," she admitted. "Everything is so confusing, but a part of me already loves this baby." Salma smiled softly. "Then there's your answer." Diana looked at her, her eyes full of tears, but also something new, a quiet resolve. "You're right, this baby is mine, my chance to love unconditionally, to build the family I always wanted." "And Kareem?" Salma asked carefully. Diana took a deep breath. "For now he doesn't need to know. This baby is mine, Salma. It's my reason to keep going, to be better." Salma hugged her again, holding her close as the weight of the moment settled in. "I'm so proud of you, Diana, and I'll be with you every step of the way." As the afternoon sunshine streamed through the window, Diana al-Sharif felt something shift within her. The fear was still there, but now it was accompanied by a power she hadn't known she possessed. This baby, this new life growing inside her, was a surprise gift from fate. What Diana didn't yet know was that this discovery would not only change her life, but lead her down a path filled with challenges, joys, and surprises. She could never have imagined the future, once so uncertain and scary, now shimmered with a new light of hope and possibilities. The days that followed were a whirlwind of feelings for Diana. Every morning, upon waking, her hand automatically rested on her flat belly, now filled with silent promises. The choice to keep her pregnancy a secret weighed heavy on her, but there was an odd sense of power in it as well. One afternoon, as she looked through job offers, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Diana, it's me, Kareem." Her heart skipped a beat. His voice, once so comforting, now stirred a mix of pain and rage within her. "What do you want?" she asked, struggling to keep composure. I need to see you. There are papers we need to sign to complete the divorce." Diana closed her eyes, breathing deeply. "Fine, tomorrow, at the cafe on the corner of my old law office, 10 a.m. "Thanks, Diana, and how are you?" His question caught her off guard. For a moment, Diana considered telling him about the baby, but something held her back. "I'm fine, Kareem." "Better than I expected," she replied with a firmness that even surprised herself. After hanging up, Diana sat by the window, gently touching her belly. "Don't worry, little one," she whispered. "Mom is strong, we'll be fine." The next day, Diana arrived at the cafe, her heart racing. She saw Kareem sitting at a table at the back, and for a moment all the pain and betrayal came crashing back over her. "Diana," Kareem said, standing up, "thank you for coming." She sat down, keeping a careful space between them. Let's get this over with, Kareem. As they went through the papers, Diana could feel Kareem's gaze on her. Finally, he broke the silence. You look different, he noted. There's something about you that's changed. Diana lifted her eyes to meet his for a brief moment. She thought about telling him the truth, but then the image of him with Jasmine flashed in her mind, strengthening her resolve. Life goes on, Kareem. She answered simply, people change, they evolve. Kareem nodded slowly. Diana, I'm sorry for everything. She looked at him, a mix of feelings churning within her. It's too late for that, Curry, she said. Let's just sign the papers and end this with trembling hands. Both of them signed the documents that finally ended their marriage. Diana felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Goodbye, Kareem, she said, standing up. I wish you the best. Before he could reply, Diana walked out of the cafe feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and an unfamiliar sense of freedom in her heart. As she walked down the street, her hand automatically rested on her belly again. It's just you and me now, little one, she whispered, and I promise you'll have all the love in the world. Diana didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of joy to find out. With each step, she moved farther away from her past and closer to a new beginning, one filled with obstacles, yes, but also with endless possibilities. Diana Al-Sharif could never have thought that this new chapter of her life would lead her down paths she hadn't expected, facing tough choices and stunning revelations that would test her resilience and eventually change the course of her destiny. The months flew by and Diana threw herself into the job of rebuilding her life. Her pregnancy grew with her drive, each day marking a new step toward the future. One morning, as she prepared to leave for her first day at a famous law firm, the doorbell rang. When she opened it, she was met with Salma holding a box of pastries and a glowing smile. Happy first day at your new job, Supermom, Salma gushed. Stepping inside, Diana couldn't help but smile lightly, caressing her now noticeably round belly. Thank you, Salma, I don't know what I'd do without you, she said, her voice thick with thanks. They sat at the kitchen table enjoying the cookies and coffee, decaf for Diana, of course. Are you nervous? Salma asked, watching her friend with a knowing look. Diana sighed, setting her cup down on the table. It's a big step getting back into the workforce like this in my state. Salma took her hand, offering a reassuring squeeze. Diana, listen to me, you're bright, talented and stronger than you think. You're going to blow them away. But what if they find out I'm pregnant? Diana's worries spilled out. What if they think I can't handle the job? Salma's answer was firm, unwavering. Then you'll prove them wrong. And besides, they can't discriminate against you for being pregnant. That's illegal and you know it better than anyone. Diana felt a renewed sense of confidence settle within her. You're right, I can do this for me and for my baby. She stood up, straightening her carefully chosen outfit which quietly concealed her growing belly. Wish me luck, she said, pulling Salma into a hug. You don't need it, but good luck anyway. Salma answered with a smile. The day at the office was a whirlwind of new faces, endless knowledge and challenges. Diana threw herself into her tasks, proving her worth with every job. But as the day wore on, she couldn't help but notice the curious looks from some of her colleagues as she packed up her things to leave. Her new boss, Mr. Khaled Aled, approached her desk. Diana, great work today, he said, his smile real. There's an important case I'd like you to handle. Can you stay for a moment to discuss it? Diana's heart skipped a beat. This was her chance to prove herself, but it also meant sharing her secret. Of course, Mr. Aled, she answered, following him to his office. As Mr. Alsad described the details of the case, Diana felt her baby move, almost as if giving her strength. She took a deep breath, gathering her strength. Mr. Alsad, she stopped gently, before we continue, there's something I need to tell you. I'm pregnant, 6 months to be exact. For a moment he stared at her in surprise, then smiled kindly. Congratulations, Diana. That explains the glow you have. He paused then asked, I assume you still want to handle the case? Diana felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Absolutely, Mr. Alsad. I'm committed to my work and I can promise you that my pregnancy won't affect my performance. I never doubted you for a second. He answered with confidence. Welcome to the team, Diana. I'm sure you'll do a great job. That night, as Diana lay in bed gently caressing her belly, she felt a rush of pride and hope. We did it, little one, she whispered, Moms, building a bright future for us. What Diana didn't know was that this was only the beginning of a series of challenges and victories awaiting her. Fate had more surprises in store, some sweet, some bitter, that would test her strength and determine the direction of her life and the life of her unborn child. The day had come. Diana lay in the hospital bed, her face slick with sweat, but her eyes were filled with purpose. Diana al-Sharif lay in the hospital bed, her hand tightly gripped by Salma. Come on, Diana, you can do this. Salma supported, her voice steady though Diana could feel the tremors of her own fear. Another contraction rushed through her, relentless and sharp. It hurt so much, Diana cried. Her teeth clenched, her body trembling with passion. I don't know if I can make it. Dr. Zamani al-Munsuri, the obstetrician, stepped forward with a calm smile, her manner reassuring. Diana, you're doing an amazing job, she said, her voice gentle but firm. We're almost there. One more push right. Diana nodded weakly, summoning the last stores of her strength. With a primal cry, she pushed once more, and then the unmistakable wail of a baby filled the room. It's a girl, Dr. al-Manuri stated. Holding the tiny bundle, Diana released a breath of relief and joy. My baby, my little girl, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. But before she could savor the moment, another contraction gripped her tightly. What's happening? What's going on? Diana's voice wavered in fear. Dr. al-Mansur's eyes widened in surprise. Diana, we have a treat. There's another baby coming. What? Diana gasped, her mind struggling to understand twins. Sommer shouted, squeezing Diana's hand even harder. Exhausted, but resolute, Diana prepared herself for round 2. Let's do this, she mumbled under her breath. Minutes stretched on, feeling like an age, until another cry pierced the air. It's a boy, Dr. al-Manuri said, her face glowing with the happiness of the successful delivery. As she held the second baby, Diana, totally drained but filled with indescribable joy, gazed at her twins, now swaddled in blankets by the nurses. Twins, she muttered, tears streaming down her face. I can't believe it. Salma, equally touched, kissed her friend's forehead. You did it, Diana. You're incredible. When the nurses finally put the babies in her arms, Diana's heart swelled to the point of breaking. Hello, my loves, she whispered, kissing their tiny foreheads. I'm your mom. Salma watched the scene, tears of happiness in her eyes. How are you going to name them? Salma asked, her voice soft. Diana looked down at her children, her tired face lighting up with a radiant smile. Leah and Zaid, she said, her voice stable, filled with love, my little fighters. Diana whispered, and a new strength surging through her. She was no longer just Diana, the woman who had been abandoned and betrayed. Now she was Diana, the mother of Lila and Zaid, a woman ready to face anything life threw at her. I promise, she whispered to her children, I will always be here for you. We will be a family full of love, no matter what happens. What Diana didn't know was that this moment of pure bliss was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Fate had more twists and turns in store for her, some that would test her strength in ways she could never have imagined, but others that would bring joys beyond her wildest dreams. As night dropped over the city, in that hospital room, a new family had been born, and with them a stronger, more determined Diana al-Sharif emerged, filled with love for life and her children. The future, though uncertain, shimmered with the promise of new starts and unconditional love. Years passed in the blink of an eye. Diana found herself caught in the whirlwind of diapers, bottles, and sleepless nights, but also in the laughter of her children, their first steps and their babbled words. Leah and Zaid grew strong and healthy, filling Diana's days with joy she never thought possible. One spring morning, as she prepared breakfast for her 5-year-old twins, Diana got a call that would change her life once more. Diana al-Sharif. A deep voice on the other end of the line asked. Diana fixed the phone between her shoulder and ear as she poured cereal into 2 small bowls. This is James Thompson, senior partner at Sun & Associates in Dubai. We've been following your career with great interest, and we'd like to offer you a position at our company. Diana nearly dropped the number box in shock. Thompson & Associates was one of the most prestigious law companies in the country. This chance could elevate her career to heights she had never imagined. It's an honor, Mr. Thompson, Diana stammered, her voice shaking with both excitement and disbelief. Diana al-Sharif took a deep breath, her fingers pausing over the phone as she composed her thoughts. The voice on the other end was calm, but there was an edge to it that made her pulse quicken. Of course, M. al-Sharif, the voice said, we admire your determination, especially given your position. It's not every day we come across someone with your resolve. We would be happy to work around your plan. How about you come to Dubai next week to talk the details? Diana glanced across the kitchen at her 5-year-old twins playing noisily at the table, their laughing filling the air with innocence. They were unaware that a single exchange might completely alter the course of their lives. She swallowed hard, her voice shaky, as she responded, I need to think about it. She said, Can I give you an answer in a couple of days? Of course, Miss al-Sharif. Take your time, came the comforting reply. Be ready for your call. As Diana hung up, her hands shook slightly. She sat down at the kitchen table, her gaze fixed on her children, but her mind was elsewhere, racing with thoughts of what this offer meant for her. For them, the apport of a lifetime was in her hands, but it came with the cost of uprooting her children from everything they knew. It was a dream every lawyer would envy, working with one of the most famous firms in the world, but it felt like a far-off fantasy. Mama, are you okay? Lee's voice cut through her and Diana looked into her daughter's big brown eyes full of worry. I'm fine, sweetheart. Diana answered, offering a forced smile. Mama's just thinking about something important. Is it something good or bad? Asked Zaid, joining the talk with his usual curiosity. Diana pulled them both into an embrace. Her heart broken. She pressed her kisses to their foreheads and whispered, I don't know yet, my loves, but no matter what, we'll always be together. Later that evening, after putting the children to bed, Diana picked up the phone again. This time it was Salma on the other end. Her voice laced with excitement. Dobie, Selma shouted. The excitement barely controlled. Diana, that's amazing, I know, Diana said quietly. The excitement mixed with doubt. But the kids, Salma? Should I even be considering this? Am I being selfish? Salma's voice softened, going serious. Diana, listen to me. You've given so much for them. You've given everything for those kids. Maybe it's time for you to do something for yourself. Think about the future you could offer them. Think about what this could mean for them. Diana fell silent, her mind running. Salma's words echoed in her mind as she weighed her choices. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke again, her choice made. You're right. Diana said with newfound resolve, I'll go to Dubai, I'll see what they have to offer. As she hung up the phone, Diana felt a mixture of feelings flood her. There was joy, yes, but there was also fear. She was about to make a choice that would change everything for her family. What she didn't know was that this decision wouldn't just affect her career. It would also lead her back to a past she thought she had left behind, a past that would force her to face ghosts she had buried long ago. The future was full of shocks, some that would test her strength and others that would bring a joy she hadn't dared to imagine. The sun blazed high in the sky as the luxury cruise ship sailed great peacefully over the sparkling waters of the Arabian Sea. Diana stood on the upper deck, her hands resting on the bar, inhaling the salty air. With a deep sigh, the ship cut through the waves, the gentle rocking of the boat settling her restless mind if only for a moment. Mama, look, Lila shouted, pointing out towards the horizon, dolphins. Diana smiled, her heart warmed as she watched the dolphins leap and play in the water. She pulled Lila into a hug, pressing her face against her daughter's. Aren't they beautiful? Diana asked softly, Can we swim with them? Zaid, always the adventurous one, asked, his wide eyes filled with wonder. Maybe another time, darling? Diana replied, brushing a lock of hair from his face. But how about we explore the ship instead? Excited, the twins quickly followed her, pulling her along as they headed inside the ship to see what adventures awaited. But as they moved through the luxurious halls of the cruise, Diana couldn't shake the feeling of guilt that gwetted her. This trip was meant to be a reward for them, a chance to celebrate the big move to Dubai. But it was also a way for Diana to escape the overwhelming thoughts and questions that had taken root in her mind. As they wandered deeper into the ship, Diana couldn't help but think on how much had changed in the past few months. The job with Thompson and Associates had been challenging and rewarding, but it was also exhausting. Moving to a new place with 2 small children had felt like an emotional roller coaster. "Look, Mama, a big pool," Zaid shouted, snapping her out of her thoughts. "Do you want to go swim?" Leah asked, her eyes sparkling with joy. Diana hesitated for a moment, then nodded, giving them both a smile. "Let's go," she said, knowing that, despite the fear and uncertainty that weighed on her this moment, this small, simple joy was worth it. Diana al-Sharif was on the point of speaking when she suddenly froze. Just a few meters away, sitting at the bar, by the pool, was a guy she never thought she'd see again, Kareem Aled. Time seemed to come to a stop. Diana felt as though the ground beneath her was moving, and it wasn't the movement of the boat. Kareem looked up from his drink, their gazes meeting. The shock in his eyes was palpable. "Mama," Leah asked, pulling at Diana's hand. Diana blinked, snapping back to reality. "Yes, sweetheart," she smiled weakly, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm fine," she added immediately, though the words felt hollow. Kareem stood up, clearly unsure whether to approach or not. Diana made her choice in a fraction of a second. "Kids, why don't you go check out the pool up close?" she proposed. "Stay where I can see you," she added, never taking her eyes off Kareem. The twins, oblivious to the unfolding drama, ran off happily toward the pool. Diana took a deep breath and walked toward Ward Karim, each step ringing loudly in her ears. "Diana," Karim said, his voice a mixture of surprise and something else, sorrow, perhaps Kareem. Diana replied, surprised at how calm her voice sounded. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I," he said, his eyes moving toward the children playing near the pool. Are they yours?" Diana felt a surge of feelings, pride, protectiveness and a tinge of anger. "Yes, they're mine, Leah and Zaid." Kareem's face went pale. "How old are they?" "5, Diana replied, watching as the understanding hit Kareem. "5, but that means," his voice trailed off, confusion and shock taking over his features. Diana nodded slowly. "Yes, Kareem, they're your children." The quiet that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant laughter of the children and the gentle murmur of the waves. Diana felt like the world had stopped holding its breath, waiting for Kareem's response. What Diana didn't know was that this unexpected encounter would set off a series of events that would test her strength, her love for her children and her ability to forgive. Fate had chosen it was time to face the past, and Diana was about to embark on the most emotionally intense journey of her life. The silence stretched between Diana and Karim, an abyss of unspoken words and unresolved questions. Kareem's eyes moved between Diana and the children. His face a mixture of shock, confusion, and something Diana couldn't quite understand. "Why?" Karim begun, his voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" Diana felt a wave of feelings, anger, pain, and a hint of guilt that she hadn't expected to feel. Karim, when did you leave me for your assistant? Or maybe when we signed the divorce papers?" Karim lowered his eyes, guilt washing over his face. "I'm sorry, Diana, I made a terrible mistake." "A mistake?" Diana let out a bitter laugh. "A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. Karim, what you did broke our lives." Just then, Lila and Zaid came running over. "Mama, can we go to the pool now?" Zaid asked, indifferent to the tension in the air. Diana faked a smile. In a moment, sweetie mama's talking to an old friend. Karim's eyes filled with tears as he looked at the children up close. "They're beautiful," he whispered. Lila, always the more perceptive of the two, eyed Karim with interest. "Who are you?" she asked simply. Diana felt her heart stop. This was the moment she had feared for years. Karim glanced at Diana, asking her permission before he spoke. He began, but Diana stopped him. "Kids, this is Karim Hek, an old friend of mine," Diana Al-Sharif said, her voice shaking just slightly. Kareem Aled nodded in acknowledgement, respecting her choice. "It's a pleasure to meet you both, Leah and Zaid," he added, his voice thick with emotion that he struggled to control. The children smiled at him, unaware of the storm that was quietly building around them. "Do you want to come swim with us?" Zaid asked, ever the nice one. Before Kareem could reply, a woman's voice called out from a distance, "Kareem, where are you?" Diana recognized the voice instantly. Jasmine Karim's former assistant and now his wife, came from the crowd. She froze when she saw the scene in front of her. Diana Jasmine whispered, barely heard. Her gaze changed to the children, and Diana could see the moment of realization hit her like a heavy blow. The air around them seemed to crackle with stress. Diana felt her world start to spin out of control. Here they were, four people whose lives had met in the most unexpected and painful way. "I think we have a lot to talk about," Karim finally said, his voice thick with emotion. Diana glanced at her children, who were watching the unfolding scene with growing confusion. Then she turned her eyes back to Karim and Jasmine, their faces marked with a mix of guilt, shock, and something that almost looked like hope. "Yes," Diana answered, her words carrying the weight of years of hidden truths and unresolved pain. "I think it's time we all know the truth." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden and pink hues across the horizon, Diana understood that this wasn't just a cruise through the Arabian Gulf. It was a journey into the past, a confrontation with buried facts, and perhaps the beginning of something entirely new. What Diana didn't yet know was that the truths to come would shake the very foundation of everything she thought she knew about her past, her present, and her future. Fate had drawn these four wounded souls together in the middle of the sea, and the waves of change that loomed on the horizon promised to be as powerful as the one surrounding the ship. As the evening sky fell over the cruise ship, Diana, Karim, Jasmine, and the children sat at a secluded table in the ship's restaurant. The atmosphere was charged with an unspoken tension, expectation, and raw emotion. "Kids," Diana began, her voice trembling slightly. "There's something important I need to tell you." Ilala and Zaid turned their wide, curious eyes toward her. Diana took a deep breath, looking for the right words. "Do you remember when I told you about your dad?" she asked softly. The twins nodded. Zaid was the first to speak. "You said he loved us very much, but that he couldn't be with us." Diana's heart tightened. "That's right, sweetie. Well, it turns out, Karim is your dad." The quiet that followed was deafening. The children's eyes flickered between Diana and Karim as they tried to understand what she had just said. "Our dad, Lila," asked, her voice barely a whisper, with tears welling in his eyes. Karim nodded. "Yes, Layla, I'm your father." Zaid, always the more impulsive of the two, jumped out of his seat and rushed into Karim's arms. "Dad," he shouted, squeezing him tightly. Diana watched the scene progress, her emotions, a swirling mix of joy for her children, pain for the years lost, and a deep gore fear about what this change would mean for her small family. Jasmine, who had stayed silent until now, finally spoke. "Diana. I am so sorry, and I never thought." Dee cut her off, her voice, firm but not unkind. "Now's not the time, Jasmine. There's so much we need to sort out, but right now this is about the children." Karim, still holding Zaid, turned to Diana with a look that blended gratitude and remorse. "Diana, I know I have no right to ask this, but would you give me the chance to get to know my children?" Diana felt the ground beneath her shift as the sun dipped below the horizon, sending its warm glow over the luxurious Dubai skyline. Diana al-Sharif found herself stuck between two worlds. On one side, she saw the pure joy reflected on her children's faces as they embraced the father they had only just found. On the other, a crippling fear gripped her heart, the fear of losing them, of Karim Aled trying to take them away from her. "Joe," Diana began, her voice faltering, but she was quickly stopped by her daughter, Layla. "Mama," the young girl said, her small hand wrapping around Diana's. "Can we spend time with Papa, please?" Diana's heart melted at the plea, the innocence in Lee's eyes breaking through her walls. She looked over at Karim, seeing in his eyes a mix of hope and regret. "All right," Dee finally answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "But let's take this one step at a time. The children need time to adjust." Karim nodded, a glad smile forming on his lips. "Thank you, Diana. I promise this time will be different." As the night settled over the glittering city, Diana understood they were going on a journey much more profound than a simple family vacation. This wasn't just a trip through the beautiful coastline of the Gulf. It was a journey toward reconciliation, toward forgiveness, and perhaps a new form of family. From a distance, Jasmine watched the scene play before quietly approaching Diana. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you," she whispered, her voice shaking, "but I hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I never meant to cause so much pain." Diana turned to face her, surprised by the raw sincerity in Jasmine's words. Forgiveness takes time, Jasmine. Diana answered softly, but for the sake of the children I'm willing to try. As the twins bombarded Carium with questions, Diana understood that the future she had once envisioned for her family was shifting before her eyes. What the future held she couldn't know, but for the first time in years she felt a spark of hope. What she couldn't foresee, however, was that this unexpected turn of fate would open doors to options she had never considered. What began as a simple family getaway had transformed into an emotional odyssey that would change their lives forever. As the ship sailed through unknown waters, Diana felt herself navigating toward an uncertain future, one filled with possibility for healing and love. The remaining days aboard the ship passed in a whirlwind of emotions, deep conversations, and new beginnings. When the ship finally docked at the port in Dubai, Diana stood on the deck watching passengers disembark, her mind swirling with thoughts and choices yet to be made. Her re was broken by Kareem's voice, soft and steady. "It's time to leave," he said, walking toward her with Leia and Zayd in tow, their hands clasped together. "Are you ready?" Diana glanced at her children, their faces glowing with happiness after spending time with their newly found father. She then turned her gaze to Kareem, seeing in his eyes a mixture of hope and fear. Diana's voice faltered, her heart racing. "I don't know if I'm ready, Kareem. Everything's changing so fast." Kareem nodded, his understanding clear. "I know, and I understand if you need more time. But, Diana, I want you to know that I'm committed to being a part of our children's lives, and, if you'll allow me, I'd like to try and make things right between us." Diana felt her chest tighten, the weight of his words pressing down on her. "It's not that easy, Kareem. It's been years. We've changed. You have a life with Jasmine now." Mama Lila stopped her small hand clutching Diana's. "Can we see Dad when we go back home? Can he visit us?" Zayd joined in eagerly. "Yeah, can he come see us?" Diana looked at her children, her heart swelling with love and a protective instinct that rushed through her. She took a deep breath, knowing that the choice she made now would shape their lives forever. "All right," she said, her voice steady. "We can try, but we're going to take it slow. Okay, this is new for all of us." Kareem's eyes lit up with gratitude. "Thank you, Diana. I promise you won't regret this." As the group collected near the gate, Jasmine approached with a cautious yet determined look on her face. "Diana," she said softly, "I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you, but do you think we could speak quietly before you leave?" Diana paused for a moment, the weight of the request hanging in the air. Then, after a short pause, she nodded. "Kids, why don't you go with your father and grab our luggage? I'll catch up with you in a moment." As Sharim walked off with the children, Diana turned toward Jasmine. "I'm hearing," Diana said, crossing her arms. As she faced her, Jasmine took a deep breath, the words she needed to say, weighing heavily on her. "I want you to know that I fully support Kareem's choice to be a part of the children's lives, and I owe you an apology for everything. I never thought how much pain my relationship with Kareem would cause." Diana felt a rush of competing emotions, anger, pain. But oddly, there was a sense of comfort too as she listened to Jasmine's words. "Jasmine, forgiveness takes time," Diana answered, her voice steady, despite the turmoil inside her. "But I admire your honesty. For the sake of the children, I'm willing to try to make this work." Jasmine blinked back tears, her voice shaking. "Thank you, Diana. You're better than I could ever be." As they walked side by side toward where Kareem and the children were waiting, Diana felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. She didn't know what the future would look like, but for the first time in years she felt a spark of hope. As the night fades and the last sounds of the orchestra drift into silence, we are reminded that life, much like a dance, is filled with unexpected turns. Thank you so much for joining me on this unforgettable ride. I hope you liked this story of love, transformation, and the timeless dance of fate. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe for more moving tales that tug at your heart and ring the bell, so you never miss a moment of the magic. Until next time, keep thinking, keep believing, and, as always, keep watching. See you in the next part.